Good evening, everyone. Hope you all had a marvelous day, marvelous week. I'll tell you this Southern California weather this year is something to be talked about, I guess. Over on the coast, I guess they're still getting some rain and a lot of snow in the Sierras. Hello, Nancy. Out here in the desert, it's been cold and hot and cold, and now we're supposed to get up in the 90s by the end of the week. So silliness out here in the desert. Hello, Jose. But hey, I'm just grateful to be alive and grateful to be able to feel the weather. You know, for all intents and purposes, I should be under the ground right at this point in time. But God had other plans for me, so here I am, enjoying life one day at a time. So one of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to move into chapter 3. It's March, so I'm moving to the third chapter, the third month, is what we call trauma triggers. And there's the whole chapter on that, starting on page, I think it's 161. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not 161, page 61. It's trauma triggers. And they can be tricky, they can be scary, they can be painful, and they can be damaging. And oftentimes men or people that go into recovery, they're taught about trauma triggers to a certain point. Hello, Mike. To a certain point, but there are a lot of times they're not necessarily given tools to deal with trauma triggers as they come up. And most of those trauma triggers they talk about in recovery, in treatment facilities, has more to do with the drug and alcohol use than it does with the trauma abuse of, the traumatic effects of abuse. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about it tonight. I got a whole chapter of it in my book, and we'll hit, I think we got 3 or 4 Mondays in this month, so I'll hit 4 different parts of this chapter over the month, if that's what we have, 4 Mondays. So I'll go ahead and I'll read. This is actually from the first paragraph of the book on page 61. That's from the first paragraph. It says, in order to successfully reparent our inner child, and we talked about the inner child last month a little bit, and again, there's a whole chapter on that in my book. We must be able to identify our psychological triggers. A psychological or trauma trigger is any current experience that sets off a distressing memory of a painful past experience. I'm going to go over a couple of those. The trigger can be an image, a sound, a smell, or a combination of 2 or more stimuli on the outside. So we're going to talk about some of those stimuli. I'm going to give you some examples here really quickly. So the question I would have for all of you to think about, and this is, I think we all can answer this question in a way that more than once, but how often have you overreacted to, and I'll give you some situations, but how often have you overreacted to something and then wondered, why did I react that way? That person was just telling me his opinion. Oftentimes, or people will be having a conversation with somebody and they will overreact. And a lot of times we want to take that overreaction personal, like it's something we did. But the reality is, I would say probably in 95 to 99.9% of the cases, something was triggered either in yourself or in that other person from their past. It could have been, you challenged somebody's belief, and they were challenged as a kid growing up, and they never had a voice. And so when you challenge somebody, it puts them on the defense right away. So how often have you overreacted to something that someone said? Something that someone said. I'm going to give you an example of myself, and this absolutely boggled my mind at first, because this happened to me 9 years into my recovery. So I'm paying the bills one day like I always do, and I asked Kathy to come in. I got some questions. She makes some money right now. She supports us because of the growth that we're doing, and I had a question, and she has a typical answer, and it's just her personality. Randy, everything's going to work out. Don't worry about it. And it always does, right? But on this particular day, she said that to me, and then she walked out of the room. She was very calm, very loving. I didn't like her answer she gave me. So I sat in there and I was stewing, paying the bills. And when I got done paying the bills, I calmly walked out and says, hey, babe, calmly. She's sitting in a chair reading her book. Calmly said, hey, Kath. Like, well, I didn't like the way we entered the conversation about the bills in the office a minute ago. Can we talk a little more about that? I want to talk to you more about that. Very lovingly, very kindly, very just setting a boundary. She says, Randy, not now, but we'll talk later. I snapped. I lost it. And I lost it. It wasn't, I'm 9 years into recovery, and my behavior was enough to where it just wasn't nice. Let me put it to you that way. It was ugly. So when I was able to calm down and catch my breath, I'm going, what in God's name did I just do? And why did I react that way? When Kathy said, Randy, not now, we'll talk later, I did not hear Kathy. I heard my mother. Because growing up, every time my mother would say those words, those exact words, she meant, we'll never talk about it. And so that was a trauma trigger that I was unaware that I even had in me. She probably said that, Kathy probably said that to me or something similar to that countless times before. But on this one particular day, I just snapped. So fortunately, because we're both in recovery, I was able to, thanks Mike, I was able to make an amends to my wife right away. We talked about it. It's really hard because I went to her and told her why I did that. And as soon as I did that, Kathy understood. She was much easier. She's very forgiving anyway, so it's much easier for her to forgive me. So that's one thing, something that someone has said. I want you to think about that in your own life. How about, have you ever overreacted to an unusual taste? An unusual taste. I'm gonna tell you, I got examples of all these, and they're legitimate. So there was a woman, she was eating in a French restaurant, and she'd eaten this food several times before. And this one particular night, she's with her friends, and as she takes a bite of this food with the sauce on it, the sauce hit her tongue, and immediately she threw up. She immediately threw up, and she was so embarrassed because she goes, well, I don't know what happened. Why did I throw up? I've eaten this food before. And after several sessions with a therapist, she had discovered that when her sexual abuse included oral sex by her perpetrator. And when that sauce hit her tongue in just that right spot, it made her throw up and gag. So it'd been there all along. The trauma trigger was there. It had never had a reaction before. And so that's why we say they're surprising. They come and they surprise you. You don't know when they're going to show up. And so she was made aware of it, and so she was able to move on and work through that trauma trigger with a therapist. The next one I got is, how often have you overreacted to, as an example, a pair of shoes being located in just the right place on a floor next to a bed? Okay, on a floor. And it could be, this is an example I'm going to use, but it could be, the way a jacket's hanging, or the way a shirt's folded, or the way, whatever. Another example, this girl and her boyfriend, this is true, these are all true examples. After a romantic night, nice intimate night, they made love, everything was good, nothing was wrong, they were a great couple, they loved each other. She got up to use the restroom. As she come walking back into her bedroom, all of a sudden she started screaming at the top of her lungs, get out, get out, get out now, you gotta leave this house now. The guy's looking at her, man, what's wrong, what's wrong? He goes, get out, get your clothes, I'm naked. She goes, I don't care, get your clothes and get out of my house now. So he kept calling her for the next 3 days, and nothing. And so she got her therapist, and finally they talked. And what had happened was, when she walked down the hallway, she saw a pair of shoes sitting right next to the bed, in the exact spot that her dad used to leave his shoes when he would molest her. And she just snapped and lost it. So these trauma triggers, you're be unaware of them, totally unaware of them, because they're hidden deep in the psyche of who we are. That's the bad part about them. So we got to just become aware of them. And when we overreact to stuff, or somebody's let's just go. If somebody's overreacting to us and we're all good, we're just having a great conversation with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a friend, whoever, and that other person overreacts, don't take it personally. There's probably something going on within himself that's caused that overreaction. So when the trauma triggers hit, they often feel very overwhelming, and actually as though the traumatic event is happening right then and there again. And that's what happened to me with Kathy. It was just like, when it hit, I was never able to say nothing as a child. When that trauma trigger was triggered, I felt it. I could feel the shame. I could feel the I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough to talk about. And it overtook me. And I was able to, this time I was overreact. I way overreacted, to be honest with you. So by their nature, triggers take us by surprise. They're not going to say, "Hey, guess what? Here I am." They're gonna blindside us. It's just their nature, and there's really no warning whatsoever. They can instantly send us into a traumatic trance. That's what happened to me. It's almost like a blackout. I was in this trance, and nothing Kathy said could just calm me down. So we gotta be careful of that. Try to catch ourselves when we start feeling something. Try to stop ourselves as soon as we can. If we've hit that traumatic trance, we're just gonna have to take a walk and breathe and pray and ask God to help us out. And the biggest thing too is what they can also do is they can send us right down we can spiral down a rabbit hole of shame and go passive, pushing our partner and friends emotionally, physically, or both away, pushing our partners and friends away, both emotionally and physically. And then when I say we go passive, we're accepting or allowing what happens or what others do without active response or resistance. We don't stick up for ourselves. We deserve it, It's just what it is. So we have to be careful with these trauma triggers. I'm going to tell one more story about a trauma that is really important, and then I'll tell you what triggers are. And I might have told the story before, but I spoke at Betty Ford several years ago to the outpatients, and I always give my cards out when I'm there. And about 3 months after I spoke this one time, I get a telephone call from this guy. And he says, "Hey, Randy, you remember me? Blah, blah, blah." I go, "Yeah, I remember you. He goes, "I need to talk to you." I go, "Okay, cool, man. We'll meet Friday." And this was like on a Tuesday, And so when I met with him on Tuesday, he told me he got out and he drank. I go, "Okay." And because I knew he had been abused, I kind of knew why he drank. But I wanted him to tell me. So I said, "Kerry, tell me, what happened? I never put anybody down if they trip. But I want to know why. I'm curious. What happened? Why'd you drink, man?" He goes, "Randy," he goes, "I talked about," and this is so important. Please hear this. "I talked about my sexual abuse while I was in treatment. I talked about it with my counselor. I thought I was fixed. I thought I was done with it. I thought that's all I had to do was talk about it. I talked about it with my sponsor. I thought that's all I had to do." This is another example. "But Randy, I got out. I'm 3 months sober. I'm walking down the road. Something, I don't know what happened, triggered me. And that shame came back from my past again. And all I knew was my default button. And that was to pick up the drink and drink." All right, cool. Great answer. I can understand that, because the only thing that works for us, early recovery, pre-recovery, is the alcohol or the drugs that takes all the pain and the shame away. So he drank. Okay, not a problem. We'll work on it. Let's start all over. We'll get you going. So I worked with him for 5-6 months, and then he disappeared again. And then after he disappeared, every once in a while he'd call me up, say, I want to get back together. And all right, let's meet this Friday. And he wouldn't follow through. He wouldn't show up. Kathy reads the sheriff blogs. He was always, every month he was getting thrown in jail for something. Finally, he got thrown in prison for felony hit and run, DUI hit and run. You know, he had a restraining order against him. His wife filed for divorce. He struggled for probably a year and a half. And finally, I walked in the meeting one morning after several conversations when he was drunk and reaching out for help, but he couldn't get the help because he was drunk. And I get a message from somebody, hey, Bob, glad you're here. I walk in a meeting one morning and says, hey, did you hear what happened to Kerry? And I go, no, what happened? And he goes, he hung himself. He hung himself. So the trauma triggers are really important to recognize, because if Kerry would have had the tools to work with a trauma trigger, when he got triggered that time, he would have picked up a phone and said, man, Randy, this happened, and I'm really feeling bad. How do I deal with this? Or there could have been a number of other tools that he used. So be really aware of these trauma triggers. So what are some of the trauma triggers? And this is, you can find these on page 62 in my book. Things like smells, like if you smell alcohol or perfume or cigarettes or cigars, lotions, candles, burning wood, charcoal, or incense. Any of those smells, you know, brute cologne. I can't. That's what my stepfather used to use. Get it away from me. I can't. It reminds me of Jack too much. Okay. I mean, I don't smell it that much, but so any of those things can remind you of the traumatic event. There's sights, wallpapers, shoes, like the shoes on the floor that girl experienced, the shoes, you know, was clothing, you know. Wallpapers, it could be your house was wallpapered. There's a story I read about one survivor. His house was wallpapered a certain way, so whenever or his bedroom was, so whenever he sees that wallpaper, he gets triggered. So he has to work on that, or pictures. And then the sounds, like car engines, car exhaust, car horns, train whistles, music, TV programs, all of those things. Any one of those things are enough to trigger a trauma trigger. And I don't care if you got 6 months recovery or if you got 15 years, 20 years recovery. You have to be aware of these triggers. And things like anniversaries, like a birthday or a holiday, can also be. Birthdays and holidays were real triggering for me because it was very chaotic around my house on the holidays. I mean, real chaotic. It was so bad. Fights were breaking out between my mom and my stepfather all the time. So for a long time, my holidays were really, I was on edge a lot, and I really didn't even like them, to be honest with you. But I also want to bring this up, that triggers, there can be good triggers as well. We got to remember those. I mean, you know what? I mean, I grew up on the beach surfing, so every time I go down here to, I can't think of the Islands Restaurant. They got all those surf movies on there. I mean, I get lost in those surf movies. It takes me back to when I was a kid. It takes me back to when I was out there in my bliss, surfing all the time. It was just me and the waves and God. You know, I love to go to the Sierras. It reminds me of my real father, the one that didn't abuse me. You know, so there's also a lot of really good triggers that we have in our life too. So we want to be aware of those. More aware of those. Well, I don't want to say more. We need to be aware of those too, as much, if not more. Though we need to be aware of our trauma triggers from the past because they come up at unforeseen times. So anyways, that's a little bit about the trauma triggers. There's a whole lot more. I got a whole chapter on it. I'll be talking more about a couple how to work through them probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I want to end with a couple quotes that are from this chapter. One's from Judith Lewis Herman. After a traumatic experience, a human system of self-preservation seems to go onto permanent alert. If the danger might return as if the danger might return at any moment. So especially early on in one's recovery, a lot of recovering abuse survivors, a lot of abuse survivors are very hypersensitive to their surroundings. You can walk in a room and you can see them. They're back against the wall. They're looking at everybody, they intuitively know who they can talk to, or who's safe and who you can't talk to, or who's not safe. We have an intuitiveness about us. So we're always, we're always looking around. Are we safe? Is it safe here? Can I talk to this person? Can I not? Now, over time, with doing the proper work, when you really start getting into the garden and start digging up all the roots of the weeds that are in our garden, when you start digging that stuff and digging it up, that becomes less and less of an issue. I don't have to sit with my back to a wall anymore. The one thing I don't like is when somebody comes to talk to me and has to get right in my face. I do not like that at all. I need my 3 feet of space because my stepfather was always in my face, and it's just not a good thing. So that was a quote by Judith Lewis Herman. And I got one more. Having triggers or reacting to them, this is really important. Having triggers or reacting to them does not mean you are crazy or defective. Does not mean you are crazy or defective. However, when you are blind to what you are feeling and why you are feeling it, you may be driven to act in ways that do not serve you well. That last part, however, when you're blind to what you are feeling, just like I was blind when I reacted to Kathy, okay, I was driven to act in ways that were inappropriate because I didn't know where it was coming from. So we're not crazy. We're human beings. A lot of us are wounded and scarred. I can say today that, with 12 years of recovery from my abuse, I'm doing really, really well. I don't have a lot of my trauma triggers come up, and I know what they are. I know how to react to them. I know how to respond, not react. And if I trip, I can apologize right away. There's a lot of other little triggers I experience too when people aren't true to their word to me. When people say they're going to do something, they don't do it. That's a pet peeve. I just seem to can't shake that one. I mean, I don't get angry anymore, but it really bothers me. So look, you get my book on Amazon.com. Also, you can get my workbook now is available on Amazon. So the 7-day challenge of Healing the Man Within. So both the book and the workbook are available on Amazon. The book is available at the Destiny Church bookstore in Indio. It's also now on the Hazelton Betty Ford Center in Rancho Mirage. It's in their bookstore as well. And I got a couple of them in the Barnes & Noble store in Palm Desert Town Center. And just so I know any of the locals, right, so the locals here, I'll be doing a book signing on Tuesday, March 14th from 11 to 1 at the College of the Desert bookstore. And the other thing, I didn't bring one in here, I'm sorry, I meant to. You can now get my book and my workbook on a flash drive. It comes in a nice little case with a beautiful case. It's Healing the Man Within it. It's a little flash drive. It's got my book and the workbook in it. And you can get that for $20 compared to $25 with the book. So for you tech-savvy people, and that's what you like, hit me up on that. You got to get that directly from me. And I'll have those at their college with me as well on next Tuesday. A couple more things. My Courageous Healers website should be up and running right now. I didn't check it before I came in, but I talked to the builder today. And it was launched, and it was supposed to be up by tonight. So it's a really nice looking website. There's going to be a lot more to it. So hopefully that'll be up tonight. And then what we got to do is I got my Ride Across America coming up, and I'm leaving Indio June 18th and headed to Beach Lake, Pennsylvania. This is a no joke ride. This is happening. The fundraising is going extremely well. A lot better than I anticipated. I got a lot of sponsors jumping on right now. I've got people that are stepping up to the plate and really are passionate about helping me, get in different places. So a lot of really good things are happening. And I want to say too, if you're here in the desert on April 22nd, Saturday, April 22nd, we are having a spaghetti dinner fundraiser. It will be at the Trainer Connection in Palm Desert. My wife's going to get a page up on Facebook here shortly. So it's going to be $10 a ticket pre-sold, and I think $6 for kids or $5 for kids pre-sold, $12 at the door, and $6 or $8 at the door for the kids. I can't remember what that one is. So, and all that money goes right to the foundation and to the ride. And the other thing, hey, Coulter, So yeah, I'm still looking for sponsors and donations on that. And I'm offering quite a few things for sponsorship and donations if you sponsor different things. So you can hit me up on that, or I'll tell you exactly what you get based on how much you want to donate. I've got jersey and bib sponsors for my writing kit, and I've also got corporate sponsors. So those are available. And then changeyourlifestorynow.com, changeyourlifestorynow.com. Please visit my website there. I'm accepting clients now for life coaching. If you're just stuck in life, no matter what you're stuck on, I can help you get through it. It's a different way of working with people. I don't tell. I ask a lot of questions. Just get curious and ask a lot of positive questions, and you can usually find you have the answers within yourself. So if everything flows the way it's supposed to, at the end of a conversation, you have the answers you need, or at least have some action steps you can take for the week coming up. So check that out as well. And I think that should be about it. So appreciate you guys all checking in with me and watching this. It means a lot to me. Do me a giant favor if y'all will. Go to my YouTube channel, and it doesn't cost nothing. Just subscribe for me, because I need this saying, hey son, glad to see you. Just go to the Healing the Man Within YouTube channel. Do me a favor, just subscribe to it. Get your friends to subscribe to it. I'm trying to build a big base. We're going to be using it to monitor the ride across America and everything else that I do. So I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. It doesn't cost you nothing more than 20 minutes of your time at the most. Okay? So with that, I'll say goodbye. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. I will be back next Monday night at 6 o'clock on another session on trauma triggers. All have a super blessed week. And remember, if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does, but more importantly, God does. Be blessed, guys. Thanks.